Let's get the people what they want. The Wade-O Radio Show.
This interview is brought to you by our sponsor, Devin Turner. This MC and pastor is not only putting out great music, but he's doing phenomenal work in his community and abroad. Check out his new album, Luminary, available on all digital outlets. For more info, visit his website at devinturner.org.
Man, I think the main catalyst for being involved in, a little bit more of the social justice, racism talk, cultural talk in our nation was the death of Michael Brown. I think it was very disturbing and shocking and saddening at the same time. And I think I realized it was the first time I realized that whatever this issue of race that seemed to be so distant in our past with the civil rights movement wasn't so distant anymore. Michael Brown was a young man. He was an 18-year-old man who was gunned down with a lot of questionable circumstances surrounding his death. And it brought back a lot of the things that were reminiscent of, the Rodney King trials or different things of sort. And so I think it was that. On top of that, it was watching Eric Garner be choked out on camera, and for me that was a little bit more cut and dry. It wasn't as much ambiguity around the case. To see the outcome of Eric Garner's trial, to see that there was no indictment or conviction of the people involved was very troubling to me. And so I think that's really where I began to kind of make some redirection of my focus, try to expand my focus some more. I just wanted to give some voice to that area as one, a person of color, but then two, as a follower of Jesus Christ, and be able to give some more meaningful, some depthful words, some words with some depth, and hopefully provide some healing to folks. I think it's unfortunate that when anyone is either killed by police violence, or a citizen or police is killed by violence from a citizen, right? I think it's extremely misfortunate. It is worthy of us grieving, right? The loss of life at any level, whether you are law enforcement, whether you're a civilian, whether you're a child unborn, it's worthy to grieve the loss of life. And so, one, I share that sentiment with that family, the loss of the guy's fiance and just the relationship that's lost. And there's a lot of questionable circumstances around her death. We constructed a system in the early 1900s of law enforcement, originally around slave catching. And so the police force was just that. It was, once they newly released people, it was constructed around slave catching. And then later on, a system called peonage and these labor things, they put people in jail. And so the black codes, and so I think for us, we really are feeling the outworking of a system that's kind of always been in place. But it wasn't until the discovery of social media, or the expansion of social media and the camera phone, that it kind of put it right in our face in a very unavoidable way. And so that's why Rodney King's trial was so big. Because for the first time, despite all of the ongoing allegations from the LA community, the California community, for the first time, America could see all that was occurring and really just find themselves empathizing with the person of that community in a way that reflected their cries. And so, yeah, I think when it comes to the trials that are coming up, I think America has a lot of questions they need to answer for themselves. But it's going to force us to, hopefully it'll force us as a nation to be honest about our practices, judicial practices, especially when it comes to police violence, that whatever the accountability structure as it relates to police violence has to be equitable, has to be just, and it has to reflect the oath that they swear, which is to protect and to serve. And that's what I hope comes out of it, that we get a more healthier, refined expression of law enforcement. and appropriate accountability for those who may cross the boundaries at times as they attempt to do their job. You know, it's very interesting when we're asking about issues of justice as it relates to North America and whether or not justice will be enacted. And I think that oftentimes we assume that people from the minority context almost they merit injustice. I mean, I hate to say that. We talk about, you know, poor home cultures, poverty, fatherlessness, sagging pants, whatever the external attributes and economic realities that are reflected within poor black and brown, and even I would say white Anglo communities, trailer parks, right? We kind of say as a society, you guys kind of deserve that. And it may not be worth fighting for. Historically, what you see though, when there's been an uprising, it's always come on the heels when the collective recognize that they too are being impacted by what's occurring. And so the labor unions, the strikes that happened in the early 1900s, that came as a byproduct of not just poor marginalized black and brown people feeling as if they were not paid an equal wage or a meaningful wage. That happened when the collective of Irish and Dutch people and people from all sorts of ethnicities began to see like, man, this is unjust. And so I'm hoping that as these cases unfold for us as a nation, not that I want to see any more people of diverse backgrounds be executed by the state, right? But I think it's until you believe that you too are subject to a law or justice system that may need to be reformed, will the majority begin to press the issue. And so, yeah, I don't think until it becomes your issue that it becomes our issue, that it'll be your issue, and people in positions of power will press for anything different. And so I think it'll take that. It'll take us seeing, man, this is my issue, not this is those people over there's issue, before real change begins to happen. A few years ago, you know, especially as I was, you know, beginning to struggle through, man, who am I? How do I come into a healthy understanding of myself? I stumbled into a small group with some guys. And, you know, for the first time in my life, I was honest with them, right? It was probably one of the most terrifying times of my life. I had never shared myself with a group of people in a way that I could be hurt so easily. But what I was met with in this small group was, it wasn't just that I was completely broken. It was I was being met with love and encouragement despite my circumstances. And as I began to read through scripture, I kind of began to see this theme of, man, when people within the scripture see themselves not as heroes, not as people who are well put together, but as a mess, that's when the power of God has space to change them, to inspire them, and to use them. And so I started saying this phrase, yo, I am a mess and yet deeply loved, which basically is a culmination of just two things. Man, one, I am a mess. Like I'm, you know, not my past, but my present. And I'm so far from where I need to be. But at the same time, I'm loved by God. Meaning like he cares for me despite those things. And it's out of that thing that I can fight from joy and not fight for the victory that I need. And so, yeah, this whole idea of I'm a mess and yet deeply loved is literally my life slogan. And it comes really at the center of all things. So when I find myself getting a little too haughty, a little too prideful, I remember, man, I'm a mess. You know, I'm not better than anyone else comparatively. But then when I find myself feeling very insecure and broken and unusable, I remember, man, I am deeply loved by God. And that's what gets me through days. And I think that's what people need to hear. People in different seasons need to hear that they either are a mess or they're loved, so that they can begin to experience a new hope and a new joy. whether or not what we're experiencing today, 2017, in the relational culture, is consistent with the relational culture of 60s, 70s, 80s, they're different. I would say they're different and they're the same, right? They're the same in the sense that people are people, and people have always struggled to obey laws, the laws that govern relationships, the things they need to do to be healthy, the things they need to do to be committed, right? I would say what's different though is because of how our society has shifted in terms of commitment, marriage is seen as something that maybe you'll get to over time, potentially will happen. I would even venture to say outdated. Most people see marriage, you hear the word marriage, it just sounds old. It sounds like something that you don't want to be a part of, culturally speaking, right? So for the first time in history, in order to have a meaningful relationship, marriage doesn't have to be anywhere on the radar. So truthfully, I think with some of the stuff that's coming out, 2017, and let me check your phone, this is a situationship, let me do all these different things. It's just the outworking of people trying to navigate relationships as best as they can to intimacy, void of a meaningful and matching commitment. And so we're just trying to go as far as we can. How far can we go? How far can we take this thing? Only to realize that it's tricky. It's much trickier than what we thought. And side chicks and situationships and let me check your phone, and like it's much more complex trying to juggle it and maintain over time. And I think that's what comedians are making fun of. They're making fun of when we try to commit and we try to juggle them. Man, it doesn't turn out right. We're trying to check the codes in your phone, and we want to know how many people you liked on Instagram, and did you DM that person, did you not? And so what I would say is, yeah, that's a new aspect because social media is on its rise, is new for us. But the desire to deviate from, a monogamous relationship between a man and woman is not new. That's ancient. Yeah, I made a quick shift to, so we started out 9 years ago helping couples. I was a couple, I was married and needed some help and realized, man, quickly I need to help myself, and then as I grow, I need to be able to encourage some more folks. And so we started an organization, Build a Better Us, based off of the idea of helping couples. And so got involved in it, started seeing growth and change with people. And I think over time, man, you do this for a while, you start realizing that a relationship is only as healthy as the individuals that are in it, right? And so it really started creating this new interest on individual health, individual growth, individual maturity. Because again, a relationship is only the culmination of the individual growth and what that looks like. And I think the more that we begin to have those conversations about individual growth as you grow in a relationship, the question of singles started becoming a red hot thing that, if you're going to do relational development, if you don't have singles formation, then you're going to find yourself very quickly not able to speak to the meaningful needs that would lead people to the other end of relationships. And so, so we got into it. I mean, it actually started at an event. We did a Q&A and thought, man, this is going to be a quick Q&A, get in here and speak, share. And what was to be hour long turned into 2+ hours of question asking. And I think that was the first time I realized that there was something bubbling beneath. There was like almost a crisis that was occurring. And so it forced me as someone who's in the business of relationships to start saying, what are we doing to serve people who are specifically either they're single because of that's just their relational position, or maybe they're divorced, or maybe they're in a situationship where they're trying to figure it out. It's complicated. It hasn't fully come to maturity, but we need it. And so Build a Better Us actually started a one-to-one life coaching so that we could begin to help people, specifically in that season of singleness, to create some healthy awareness about emotional maturity, professional development, and even some of the spiritual formation stuff, so that as they approach whatever relationship, whether that be with family, whether that be with opposite sex, that they have a healthier sense of themselves, that they can give that help to another person. And that's what we've tried to create that for singles, so that they can become a better them and we can become a better us. I think the church has done a phenomenal job. I mean, there are men and women who are working diligently to help people in different seasons. Man, they deal with senior citizens. Churches are dealing with burying folks and performing services, baby christenings, right? Birthdays, bar mitzvahs, and baptisms, and counseling, and all types of stuff. And I feel like, we don't give church leaders enough credit. They're trying to expand, and they're trying to care and serve in a more holistic way. But I think one of the greatest challenges that I see is that we haven't taught people to think for themselves, and we haven't taught them to live maturely as singles, and then therefore being able to create mature families. And whether that's a desire or not, they have the capacity to do so. And so I think this is the new season that we're entering into, that more and more people, whether or not you thought it was just they call it a niche. This is the niche thing. Relationships is the niche thing. No, social media has proven that relationships are a primary thing. There was a stat came out a few years ago that people were more participatory in social media than they were in pornography, and that's a big deal because that's a billion-dollar industry. It's about self-gratification. But when you look at social media and the participation that people have, they're much more ingrained and engrossed in connecting to other people in relationships. And so I think relationships are more than just a niche. Relationships are essential to life. Now the question is whether or not we'll have healthy or dysfunctional relationships, not if we'll have relationships. And I think for many of us, because the trajectory of leadership oftentimes involves just academic studies, many leaders are grossly underprepared to encounter or to confront or to construct for people what it means to have a holistic emotional life, relational development. How do they connect from person to person on a friendship basis? How do they start a romantic relationship? How do they create and build a marriage? How do they build into another person? And I think because of that, the church, along with the rest of society, is feeling this huge void. It's feeling this huge crisis because of this large void that's occurring and has occurred over time. Two things for struggling singles. One, my boy Steve Ross said this, is I think it's important for you to know that the journey for another human being, or the journey to create a healthy relationship, starts with your relationship with God, not with another person. It's easy to think, man, I'm the culmination of my ability to connect with another person. Therefore, if I can connect with another person in a more meaningful way, it means I have a meaningful life. Truthfully, your relationship with God has to be primary, and that's really what informs a relationship. That's what allows you to experience joy and health, and that's the thing that you really want to cling to. And so I know it sounds cliche when people say that, but it really is. It's a central thing. Jesus even said it. He said the greatest commandment is to love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, right? And so I think that is advice not just for singles but for couples, right? Because you're going to get into a marriage or a dating relationship, and you're going to realize this relationship with God is the only thing that's not disappointing me right now. So one, I would say that. Two, inform yourself. Too oftentimes we're winging it, and we have no information, proper information beyond our experiences and observation about relationships. If you're single, start learning and reading about things of marriage and dating and family. Right, start learning before you get involved in it. It'd be like trying to drive a car, right, for the first time with no experience. Like you just jump behind the wheel, hit the gas, based off of the fact that you saw somebody drive before, right? And that's oftentimes what we're doing with marriage is we haven't studied any tests. We don't know any laws that govern the relationships. We're just jumping behind the wheel when we say I do. And no wonder why many of us crash, right? And don't have the experience that we're supposed to have. And so I would say the second thing is don't wait until you're in a serious relationship or marriage to inform yourself about what are the laws that govern relationships. I would say learn now. Don't wait until you get behind the wheel. Yeah, so this year, man, you should be looking for, man, we're launching a brand new life coaching services for singles and couples. Also, we're expanding our couples network. Build a Better Us specializes in 3 things: conferences and events, life coaching for people, and we also specialize in small groups for couples. And so this year, look out for our new Build a Better Us website. We're expanding a marriage and family people development network. And then also look forward to some of these events. We want to bring these events to your city. So you want to go to buildabetterus.com, go to book a conference or an experience, and we'll come to your city. You'll host, and we want to bring something that inspires and encourages you. So yeah, look forward for that.
Hey family, thank you so much for tuning in. Please make sure you hit the subscribe button, like this video, and leave us a comment. Would love to hear your thoughts on what we were just discussing. Also, if you want to book me for your next event, whether you got a concert, a party, a youth function, a corporate event, whatever it is, send us an email. It's booking@wadeorradio.com. I'd love to DJ your next event.